Hey guys and girls, today we're going to cover the first half of Section 4 notes for Chapter 20, and that's the United States and the Great War. So, beginning of World War I, we're going to cover four key concepts throughout Section 4. First being 721C, official restrictions on freedom of speech grew during World War I as increased anxiety about radicalism led to a Red Scare and attacks on labor activism and immigrant culture. 732A, after initial neutrality in World War I, the nation entered conflict, departed from U.S. foreign policy tradition of non-involvement in European affairs. In response to Woodrow Wilson's call for the defense of humanitarian and democratic principles. 732B, although the American Expeditionary Forces played a relatively limited role in combat, the United States' entry helped tip the balance of the conflict in favor of the Allies. And 732C, despite Wilson's deep involvement in post-war negotiations, the United States Senate refused to ratify the Treaty of Versailles or join the League of Nations. So let's jump right in. There's four main causes of World War I. The first being imperialism and economic competition. So as we talked about earlier in the units, imperialism, one of the driving forces of imperialism was economic competition. So you have countries like Germany especially that were very angry about being shut out of colonies, especially in Africa and Asia. They were especially bitter over France winning control of Morocco. So they felt that, like the British and like the French, they deserve as many colonies because they were a world power just like them. Another cause is militarism, or an arms race. Example of that would be Germany building up its navy. They wanted to challenge British naval superiority. You had Russia building up its forces in the east over fears of German aggression. And then, of course, you had just all the European powers building up military, investing in military over concerns that other nations were building up their militaries. The third one, and maybe the most important, is nationalism. We have a couple examples here. You had France, who was bitter about their 1871 defeat in the Franco-Prussian War, and they yearned to recover their lost territory, the Rhine region, and Rhineland. You have Russia's pan-Slavism nationalism, this idea that all Slavic people shared a common nationality, and it was Russia's duty to lead and defend them. Keep that in mind when we get to the assassination of the Archduke and how the alliance system triggered the beginning of the war. And then also you have nationalist movements within these two large multinational, multi-ethnic empires, Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. That will be important as well when we talk about the assassination of the Archduke. So let's get right into it. The immediate cause that lit the bomb, so to speak, or the dynamite, was the assassination of the Austrian-Hungarian Archduke Franz Ferdinand. He was the heir to the throne. So this is a little bit of background about the assassination. Franz Ferdinand was visited in Sarajevo, which was the capital of Bosnia, with his wife Sophie. While Bosnia was part of the Austria-Hungarian Empire, it was home to many Serbs who were angered by the visit and viewed Austrians as foreign oppressors. So we had a Serb nationalist movement going on within the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. And that wasn't the only one. Before it was the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, you had a Hungarian national movement that resulted in the dual monarchy. You had Romanian nationalist movements as well. So there was several different ethnic nationalist movements within the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. So this Serbian nationalist group, terrorist group known as the Black Hand, planned to assassinate the heir when he visited Sarajevo. And they were successful. A man named Gavril Princip, member of the Black Hand, shot and killed the Archduke and his wife. Austria immediately blamed Serbia for the assassination of their heir and took that opportunity with German support to declare war on Serbia. So you have all these causes kind of intermingling, and then, of course, kickstarted with the assassination of the Archduke. But that was the immediate cause, but that really just brought the other causes to the forefront. And there's a paper from the New York Times at the time when the Archduke and his wife were shot and assassinated in Sarajevo. So let's start with the alliance system then. So Austria after the assassination of its heir, is going to ask Germany, its major ally, for support against Serbia over the assassination. Germany is going to issue Austria what we call today the blank check. They're basically going to say Kaiser Wilhelm II, King of Germany, is going to basically give Austria this blank check. We're going to have your back, whatever you decide. The thinking was that this was only going to be a regional war. It was going to be self-contained in Eastern Europe. Maybe Germany would have to send in some forces to help Austria put down rebellion. But that was kind of the extent of what the Germans were expecting. So Austria is going to issue this ultimatum to Serbia, knowing full well that there's no way Serbia could meet the demands in this ultimatum. So Russia, one of Serbia's allies, again, Russia, this pan-Slavism nationalism, saw its duty to protect all Slavic people, including the Serbs. They're going to talk to Germany and try to convince Germany to convince Austria to soften its demands, while at the same time, Russia, under Tsar Nicholas, is going to begin mobilizing its military, preparing for a potential conflict. So when Serbia does not meet this ultimatum, Austria declares war on July 28, 1914. Once Austria declares war in Serbia, Russia and France are also going to form an alliance. Russia, again, already pledged its support to Serbia. They're the defender of the Slavic people. Russia knew it would need allies in this war. If Germany was to get involved, natural ally for them would be France, the natural enemy of Germany. And if we talked about nationalist movements, France has been longing to recover its Rhineland, or territory lost during the Franco-Prussian War of 1871. Germany, seeing what Russia mobilizing its forces, making allies with France, preemptively declares war on Russia on August 1st, 1914. 2 days later, on August 3rd, 1914, Germany will declare war on France. And Germany comes up with what's called the Schlieffen Plan due to General Schlieffen. And that's basically to avoid a two-front war. So let's take France out of the conflict quickly so then Germany can focus on the Eastern Front and Russia. So to get to France, they invade Belgium on August 3rd, 1914. The problem with this is Britain has declared defense of Belgium. So once Germany invades Belgium, Britain declares war on Germany on August 4th, 1914. So now, by invading Belgium, the British have entered the war in their defense. And there's a map showing you the major alliances. You have the Triple Alliance, again, that's Germany, Austria-Hungary, Italy we haven't talked about, but they will join on their side. And then the Triple Entente, the United Kingdom, France, and Russia. And as you can see, it's just a chain reaction, starting with the assassination of the Archduke, leading up to the declaration of wars in early August 1914. So now we are in a full-scale conflict. So let's talk a little bit about the war today. We're not going to get too much in, but I want to cover two things. Early battles on the Western Front, and then the new technology of modern warfare. All right, so let's start with early battles on the Western Front. German forces fought their way through Belgium, and as I said, then Britain declared war on Germany. One thing that's important about this invasion of Belgium is the Belgian forces actually resisted much more than Germany expected, really put in a dent in the Schlieffen Plan. On the flip side, in the Eastern Front, Russia is also mobilizing quicker than expected, which is forcing Germany to shift some of its forces it was planning to use on the Western Front to the Eastern Front sooner than they planned. September 1914, one of the most important battles of World War I, very early in the war, British and French troops pushed back Germany at the Battle of the Marne, right along the Marne River in eastern France there. After the Battle of the Marne, both sides dug deep trenches that led to a conflict into a long and deadly stalemate. On top of that, you have a British blockade of the North Sea, preventing ships from resupplying Germany. So much of the war on the Western Front is going to be in trenches, and it's going to be in this stalemate. It's not until 1917 that the stalemate is finally broken when the United States enters the war and thousands of American troops are arriving by the day. So after the Battle of the Marne, it's this real long, deadly stalemate. So what made some of the warfare in World War I so deadly, especially along the Western Front and the trenches? Well, after they dug deep trenches on each side with the Germans and the Allies, they were guarded by a new type of gun, rapid-fire machine guns, or Maxim guns, as well as long-range artillery that were capable of firing explosive shells. Some other new technologies that changed warfare, you had submarines, or German U-boats, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, very important. Poison gas, common thing would be to launch poison gas in the trenches, but it was deadly as well, because if you misplayed the wind could actually carry the poison gas back at you. You had early tanks, so as you can see in the picture, these tanks, to be honest, were kind of junky. They didn't last long. They broke down. And with trench warfare, they're really incapable of driving through the area in between the trenches called no man's land. You also had early aircraft in the war. Again, you have aerial fights, but that's not really going to impact the war whatsoever. They're mainly self-contained dogfights in the sky that really don't tilt the battle in favor of one way or the other. The aircraft were not yet capable of dropping missiles and bombs like World War II, where aircraft will play a extremely, extremely important part of the war. World War I, the technology just wasn't there yet. But there were dogfights, aerial fights, and actually Teddy Roosevelt's youngest son was a pilot in World War I and unfortunately died. All right, I want to wrap up today with America during the first year of wars. So, because America's not going to join until 1917. So what's going on in the first couple of years of the war as war breaks out in Europe? Well, early on, Wilson's going to declare neutrality, but he is absolutely going to pick a side. He's going to begin supplying food and munitions to the Allies, the British and the French, to fight the Germans. You also have the threat of German U-boats. They threaten that peace that Wilson tried to maintain. And in fact, Wilson's going to run for re-election in 1916 on keeping out of the war. So Germany with their U-boats are really going to put a threat to that. And the most famous example came when the Germans sank the ship called the Lusitania in 1915. It was a passenger ship from England to New York and then back to London. This killed 127 American citizens. Wilson needed an apology from Germany to keep public support out of the war. And so he met with Germany. He demanded an apology. He promised to press Britain to end the blockade. Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan wanted support for a policy that would bar passenger ships from carrying munitions, but Wilson refused. And actually, there's going to be a split between him and Bryan. Bryan's going to actually resign at the end of 1915 over this split, because Wilson still wants to secretly be resupplying Britain and France with weapons. So Germany agrees to not attack any passenger ships without announcing and giving civilians time to exit. The whole campaign on the model. He kept us out of war, which helped secure his re-election in 1916. So we'll wrap up there today. Class on Tuesday will continue. We'll see what eventually brings America into the war. But as we can see here, big part of it is their unrestricted submarine warfare. All right, so that's a wrap today, guys. I will see you in class on Tuesday. Have a great President's Day weekend.